Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, author of Visualizing Happiness in Every Area of Your Life and host of this podcast, Incredible Life Creator. And today I have with me Sergio Rojas. Hey, Sergio.
Hey, how are you doing, Dr. Kimberley?
I am great. So excited to have you on. And just so people know you, I'm going to go ahead and just read your bio.
Sounds great.
Sergio Rojas has been a certified functional health, fitness, and nutrition coach for over 25 years. He got into the field accidentally by joining a fitness challenge in order to stop buying drugs and alcohol to save for a motorcycle, which he felt would be the solution to overcoming his anger and depression issues. Sergio worked with pro athletes and celebrities to optimize health and performance, including strength coach for WNBA's Chicago Sky during the inaugural season. He did a weekly fitness wellness segment on NBC5 in Chicago for 11 years and was appointed by the White House as Executive Director of President's Council on Fitness, Sports and Nutrition in 2009. He helped over 700 long haul truck drivers improve physical and emotional health as well as their safety records. Sergio has been featured on the Dr. Oz show as a semi-finalist for Trainer of the Year. He wrote a book called Say Goodbye to Bellyfat: 6 Steps to Mastering Insulin and Losing Weight for Good. Well, we all want to know how to do that. We're in
Oh,
America.
let's do it. It's crazy, isn't it?
It is really, really crazy. So I kind of did a quick brief. You've done a lot in your short life. So tell us how this all started.
Well, I am 54, so it's not as short as some people think. But it started on accident. I initially thought I was going to be an artist. I didn't have money for college. I grew up pretty poor and struggled. I worked since I was 10 years old. I thought I was going to do something different. And by the time I was 23, 24 years old, I found myself in Chicago. I left Miami. And I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. I was doing some artwork for musicians. I was going to school and college very part-time. I didn't want to go deep into debt, so I was working 2 or 3 jobs, taking some classes, and I take some time off and just work full-time and pay the loans down. And I realized I was pretty unhappy. I was drinking a lot, doing some pretty quite a decent amount of drugs, and I got so out of shape. I remember waking up one night and going to the bathroom at like 1 in the morning, pretty hungover or drunk or whatever, high at the time. And I crossed by the mirror and I'm in my boxers as I slept in just boxers. And I just saw like, what the heck? And I had these big man boobs, these love handles, and I was always fit. And I'm like, what happened to me? And and I was waiting tables part-time at the same time. I was working 2 or 3 jobs. And on the way to this restaurant the next day, there was a sign that I'd seen a couple of times. I'd never really thought much about it. It was just a fitness challenge going on at a Bali Scandinavian health club. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I've always dreamed of buying a motorcycle. I've never been able to afford one. If I stopped buying drugs and alcohol for 3 months, what the challenge was, I did some math in my head. I could probably save up about $2,500 to $3,000. So that should be able to buy me at least a down payment on a motorcycle or buy a used motorcycle. And I did it. So I joined the fitness challenge, hoping to make win the $1,000 prize. Didn't win it, but I actually lost like 28 pounds, got in pretty good shape. But I didn't even think about that stuff. I just thought about the motorcycle, and I bought my motorcycle, got it used from somebody, and I hadn't really ridden motorcycles, so it's a pretty big motorcycle. And like I'm gonna ride at 1 in the morning when there's no traffic, like on a Tuesday night. And so I remember riding at 1 o'clock in the morning on Lakeshore Drive. And I'm like, this is it. This is solving all my anger, my depression, everything I was struggling with in life. This is what I want is the answer to my problems. And as soon as that thought ended, like this divine voice kind of tapped me in the head with a little sense of humor, said, hey, bozo, it's not the motorcycle. It's the lifestyle you've been living these last 3 months. And it kind of clicked right there. And then I'm like, oh, I actually haven't been angry. I haven't been stressed. I haven't been depressed these last 3 months as I've been doing this. And I just started looking around, as I went to my jobs the next few days. And I said, man, too many people are so not only physically unhealthy, but emotionally unhealthy. We're not happy. And so I started reading The Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama. I got deep into meditation. And I was studying theology. It was one of my courses. I was doing fine arts and theology and psychology. I wanted to be a spiritual art therapist by that point in school, as I was switching majors and adding majors and stuff. So I got deep into it. I started going to different monasteries and studying meditation and deep prayer and silence and things like that. So I just realized I'm like, I don't think God created us to be this unhealthy and unhappy. And I just made it it just became my mission. It was that divine voice that this is what you're designed to do. And I still didn't think it was going to be my career. I became certified as a trainer and nutritionist, and I was getting into meditation. So I started doing a lot of mindfulness. And I remember when I finally, and now it's 7 years later, I finally graduated with my undergrad, three majors. So I was now 31 years old at the time. And I'd been a health coach and trainer for 5 years at this point. And I said to my professor, who was actually a personal trainer, became a personal training client of mine, I go, hey, I got to go to grad school. He's like, hold on, Sergio, calm down. He's like, why don't you put both feet into this fitness and wellness world? You've always had one foot here and one foot on education with psychology and theology and art therapy and things you want to do. But it's like, the way you teach and the way you've taught me with breath work and mindfulness and fitness and yoga and nutrition, he's like, if my patients ate and followed your path, I think most of the problems would go away or at least be severely diminished. He's like, I think you'll solve and help more people this way than by listening to a person, you know, tell you their problems on a couch or you analyzing somebody's drawings and trying to figure out the problems one person at a time. So he's like, put both feet in just for a couple of years. I'm like, but I'm 31 already. I got to get to grad school. And he's like, and I trusted him, and my career kind of started taking off from there. Got a contract with NBC, then the WNBA, and all kinds of stuff started happening in the White House a few years, 8 years later. So all good stuff. And that's how I got into this field.
Wow. Yeah, you kind of did fall into it, but it's funny how it started because and that happens to us in life so many times. We think we're going towards something or running from something, and we don't realize that's not the thing. Like you thought it was the motorcycle, but when you really thought about it, you realize it was no, it's my lifestyle. And how
Yeah.
many times do we do that with so many things in life?
Yeah. And I think that's what helps so much with like the breath work and meditation is that you start to listen to the inner guidance, the inner voice that makes sense. Like some people hear voices and then it causes this anxiety and the stress. But when you hear the right voice, there's this peace that kind of settles in. Like there may be a nervousness, like, oh, this is what I thought, but that's again your head and your fear and the ego. But if you can kind of step past that and just close your eyes and breathe into it and listen to that guidance, even though you're a little afraid, it feels right to the cells in your body on a different level. It's hard to explain it, I guess, unless you really experience it. But then once you practice that, you don't struggle with decisions. You start to like just, and you may have moments of struggle, but you can always resolve them through that mindfulness practice. Like there's that deeper voice saying, yeah, okay, do this, even if it's scary, even if you're nervous about it, but go for it.
Mhm. Yeah, I was actually just having a conversation with someone today, and she asked me, how do you work with these people who are highly successful and they're always busy, always achieving, but they're still wishing for something different, like some peace or a relationship with their family, but they're just working. I said, well, I would start with them small. I would tell them to take a minute here or a minute there and do breath work or do some little exercise just maybe once an hour on gradients to get them into it because so many people have been doing the same thing for so long and they're actually afraid to stop doing what they're doing because they might lose momentum. So what are some of those things that you teach people to do throughout the day that could, calm them?
Breath work is, I think, the most important, and taking walks, being in nature. Uh, if you're struggling with something, like I've had family members that struggle with depression, anxiety, and things like that, and taking a 5 minute walk, stretching for 5 minutes. Go find someone that is also struggling and just give them a call and try to think about them and their issues and give them some support and some love. I think those are the things that are most calming. When I worked with the truck drivers, they dealt with so much stress, anxiety, depression, loneliness, and they work 14-hour days. It's one of the hardest things I've ever seen in my life. And they're away from family for 5 to 8 weeks at a time. everything's against them, the traffic, the truck breaking down. It always affects them financially. And they never had time for themselves. And I said, why don't you stop thinking about 30 minutes or an hour as a workout? A lot of them were former military and former athletes. And I'm like, you have this definition of this, but what about 4 minutes of movement? I know how long it takes to fill the tank and the gas for your truck. It's a lot more than 4 minutes. So why don't you just, focus on your breath and walk around the truck a few times and do some stretching and see what that feels like, before you go to bed, because a lot of these drivers would eat late at night and just pass out, and one of the worst things in the world to do. I'm like, just take a 10-minute walk, let that food digest. And, my book is really based on insulin and visceral fat, not about the vanity of fat, even though people think about losing belly fat for vanity reasons. Uh, and I struggled. I had gained and lost between 16 and 17 to 35 pounds, probably 8 times in my life, and five of them while I was a personal trainer and nutritionist. So if I'm struggling with this, why can't I figure this out? And there's so many gimmicky stuff out there. And I was following those gimmicks and those programs, because they were quick sells. And um, when I really studied insulin and understanding how it's connected to every system in the body and teaching how to relax your body to regulate your microbiome, which impacts your insulin, the cortisol, which impacts insulin, impacts sleep. So sleep impacts insulin, all those things. And so I give these little 6 micro habits for, mastering your insulin and losing belly fat for good. So it's breath work is the beginning though. Even like when I talk about nutrition, the first thing I would do when I was working with truck drivers, I was working at one particular company, we'd hire between 20 and 50 truck drivers a week. It's just high turnover industry. And I would do a 3-hour wellness workshop with them. And the first thing I would do is I was just like, hey, we're going to dim the lights and we're going to breathe. Like, what? They look at me like I'm crazy. And I was just like, we're going to just breathe. And I would put your hand on your belly, close your eyes. And after like 4 minutes of it, they're like, wow, I haven't relaxed like this in 25, 30 years. And then now I go, cool. Now I'm going to throw tangerines at you guys. I go, hey, before you eat it, I'm going to do another minute of breathing. And then we're going to meditate and eat this thing really super slow and smell it and look at the colors and peel it really slowly and close your eyes when you take a few bites. And we did a mindful practice on eating a tangerine. And I said, how many of you guys eat your food so fast that you forget about it, that you didn't really enjoy it, Like, yeah, all the time, but we're in a hurry. I'm like, you're not in that big of a hurry. I know you're in a hurry, but instead of taking 4 minutes to eat, take 9 minutes to eat. You'll save those 5 minutes somewhere else, but chew slowly and you'll start making more natural decisions that are healthy for you. And so I teach mindful and conscious eating, but before I even talk about what to eat, I just said, learn this practice because your intuition will tell you what's right to eat, what's not to eat. And truck drivers would call me like, I still ordered my double cheeseburger and fries, but I only ate half of it this time and I didn't even eat the fries. I took one or two, like didn't feel right. And then the next time, instead of that, I guess I got the burger and a fruit cup instead of fries. And the next time I didn't even order a burger. I got some yogurt and some berries. I'm like, just naturally, she starts choosing those things because we're wired for survival. Think about it for a second. If you pause yourself, we are wired to survive. And if you eat junk food slowly and mindfully, you notice, oh, I'm committing suicide. I'm creating cancer and disease and heart, all kinds of stuff. So I'm not saying don't do that. I like pizza, I like whiskey, I like wine, I like steak, chocolate, but how often and how much, and I eat those mindfully so I can know when to stop.
Yeah, that's so important, the mindfulness piece, because, when I think of someone who would have that type of job, they're in a hurry. And why is fast food called fast food? Because it's fast. Because
Yeah,
everybody has had in their mind, if I want to eat fast, I need to eat fast food. But like you said, you can eat a yogurt just as fast as you can eat a burger
yeah,
and enjoy it more.
absolutely.
So, what were some of the results you had, as people were changing their diets just naturally? Did you do any testing to see what was happening with their health, or did they just say they were feeling better?
No, I mean, there was definitely several hundred that we were able to test and retest. We had hundreds of them. I mean, 87%, if I remember the numbers exactly, we had 5 different risk levels of chronic disease. based on the insurance and, industry had given us. We had Loyola University helping us doing some of the tracking and data. So there's extremely high risk, medium risk, low risk, and very low risk. 87% of those people jumped at least one level of improvement, and 33 of those people jumped two or more levels. And out of the 13% that didn't jump, they didn't get worse. They just stayed within that realm. So we had some significant, we had, I think, at least 80 or 90 that got off of medications or got off most of their medications. I had a drug driver that was actually diabetic, taking oral insulin, and within 10 weeks was off. I put him on a 100% plant-based diet. Not that I think that that's a long-term solution, but it's one of the fastest and best ways to really allow the body to heal, you know.
And why is that for people who don't know? Why is a plant-based diet the best way to heal?
Because the amount of energy it takes our bodies to break down a lot of protein, that energy needs to be used in other places when we're sick. So vegetables have the highest amount of nutrients for the least amount of calories. And when I taught him how to keep the insulin levels down based on the type of fiber and vegetables he was eating, and some of the grains, even though I know people have issues with grains and I understand those issues. But again, I think it's a really good short-term solution if you're using the right types of grains and mostly vegetables. We had him on smoothies with a plant-based protein. He followed it on his own, and then he actually taught it to his mom and got his mom off diabetes medication a few months later. But it's really a vast amount of research, and it is conflicting. I mean, all of nutrition is still there's just a lot of biased information out there. I just know that from my experience personally and what I've done for hundreds and hundreds of clients, when I put people who are really sick on a plant-based diet, the body detoxifies a lot better, and it uses that extra energy to help heal, because the body does natural healing itself if you give it the right nutrients and balance the hormones that way.
Exactly. So, thinking about someone who's driving in the truck. So, did he just bring a little blender with him and make his smoothies, or how did he do that?
Yeah, so the trucking company that I was working with, I had them put little refrigerators in all the trucks, which still wasn't a lot of space, but I would tell some truck drivers to buy a plug-in cooler freezer. But we also taught them that you didn't have to buy a lot of a lot of refrigerated foods. You can get some bags of like almonds and pistachios. You can buy pre-made protein drinks, but we gave them a starter kit with a really clean meal replacement protein powder and a little Vitamix blend, or not Vitamix, the Magic Bullet blender, because we wanted to give them a starter kit so they didn't have to worry about it. That we taught them to go to Walmart and save them $500 to $1,000 a month, because in the truck stops, these fast food restaurants are costing them minimum $13, $14, on average $18 to $20 for a fast food meal. And then their bigger meals were another $35 to $50. And it's like, how can you guys spend that much money? And then if you're smoking cigarettes, you're spending another $10 a day, $12 a day. So we really had drivers saving $1,000 a month and getting healthier pretty quickly, So, we teach them, like, you could do overnight oats. You don't have to cook the oats, soak it in almond milk and some chia seeds and put some cinnamon in there and a little bit of raw honey, stick it in the refrigerator overnight, and then throw some berries on top and eat that, and actually put a little protein powder in there as well. So it really makes sure you don't spike insulin. We would teach them to make a shake. We'd take them to have, and what they noticed also was, as they started putting more nutritious food in their body, the cells weren't asking for food. They weren't asking for nutrients. So you didn't get the craving signals.
Hmm. So, how did you get the buy-in at the beginning? Did you get that with the breathing and the eating the tangerine, or how did you get buy-in to a group of people who notoriously are known for eating, fast food?
Yeah, I was nervous as can be. Like, I had never worked. I mean, I'd been working with like professional athletes, lawyers, executive CEOs of companies, very, pretty well-to-do people. I was, charged a lot of money for my services. And I was terrified. But I knew in my heart that I just genuinely care. I'm a pretty big empath. And when they came in there, I said, listen, I'm not here to tell you what to eat. I like steak, pizza, whiskey, wine, and chocolate. So I have no judgment. But I do love you. And even if I don't know you, I just genuinely care about you. I care about what you're doing for our country and how you're sacrificing so much for your families to be able to provide. So whatever you get from me today, I hope it helps you, but just know that I genuinely care. And and then I take them through this, and I told the owner, I said, listen, I need a 3 hour workshop. Like everybody, every other department in orientation is a 2 day orientation, gets like 30 minutes to 45 minutes. How are you gonna get 3 hours? I'm like, you want me to do wellness for truck drivers? I need 3 hours.
Mhm.
And I do these micro habits. I teach them breath work, then I teach them conscious eating, then I teach them small functional movements. Like if you can just get in the habit of walking 10 minutes after you eat your lunch and your dinner, you're gonna slow your lower your insulin, balance your insulin out so much better than just sitting down right after you eat. Does wonders for you. Um, and then I taught human touch, so I'd come and hug them all. Some of them would be like terrified to hug, and I said, "Look, if you come through trauma, I'm still going to come tap you in the shoulder and give you a little pat hug kind of thing." But we all need human touch. And then we talked about relationships and talked about relationship to self, and so I made them do this exercise and give me 5 things you like about yourself.
Mhm.
And at first they were like, but they started as long as one or two people do it, then the other people do it. And there's once in a while a naysayer, but whenever there's a naysayer, at least one or two people defending me. It's like, hey, shut up, man. Let him do what he's doing. If you don't want to pay attention, then but don't heckle him. So I
Mhm.
get that once in a while, but for the majority of part, they just knew my heart. I just genuinely cared, and I was there to serve them and help them, and then once you got a few drivers into the program, and they started telling other drivers, then it was pretty easy to just. We had a waiting list sometimes. I
Mhm.
had to keep adding coaches, so I had 5 coaches at one time.
Wow. And how did this all start? Like, you were working with athletes and lawyers and now a truck company. So where did that come from?
Yeah, so when I left the White House, I got contracted with the Chicago Bulls. They have a nonprofit called Energizables. So they partnered with a company called Hop Sports and the YMCA of Chicago, and they were turning two classrooms in these abandoned inner city classrooms in schools and tearing out the wall in the middle and making a fitness learning center. And they decorated all Bulls flooring and Bulls posters and Bulls players and would all come and do the grand openings. And they hired me as a consultant to help develop the curriculum for the PE teachers that didn't know as much functional movement and how to really, make this because they were used to teaching PE classes, but not fitness and functional fitness for young kids. So I came and developed the curriculum. And then the woman who was head of the YMCA at that time, Sharon and I became very close friends, and we worked on a couple other projects together. She got moved out of Chicago to Dubuque, Iowa, and was the head of the YMCA there. And one of the board members was the owner of the trucking company. He's like, "Hey, can you do a wellness program for my truck drivers from the YMCA?" And she's like, "No, but you should talk to my friend Sergio." And that's how it all started. So I started visiting. And it was a 3 hour drive from Chicago, and I'd commute back and forth and started consulting for them, mostly for the executives and then the office workers. And then eventually he's like, I need you to move out here and uh, come with me full time to help my drivers. So I had my managers running my gyms in Chicago, and I moved my family to Iowa for a few years.
Wow. How did they react to that?
My family,
Uh-huh.
we were trying to get out of Chicago anyways. We didn't want to raise our kids in the city, and we didn't like the suburbs that much. So we're like, all right, let's move to the mountains. We're going to move to Utah or Colorado. And I actually had found a place in Utah. We were down to like 2 or 3 homes, and then this whole thing Iowa happened. So we were excited to get out, and the beauty of it was that it was a 3 hour drive, so we could still visit all our good friends and family in Chicago. Uh, we had a lot of our friends come and visit us. If we were been in Utah, or Colorado, we would probably seen maybe one or two friends a year. We got to see our friends. We'd drive to Chicago at least every 2 months for a long weekend, and we'd have at least a guest every month or two. So it worked out great.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I have a question about those functional movements. So
yeah.
I know if I sit in the car too long, my hips get locked up and then it's hard to get out of the car. And I know other people, as they get older, they have similar issues. And those truck drivers, like you said, they're in the truck for 12 hours, except for bathroom or meal breaks. They're in the
Yeah.
truck. So what kind of movements help the most besides walking when you're sitting in the same position for so long?
Yeah, I mean, so it's really like finding ways to fidget and move while you're forced in those positions. to move as much as you possibly can and being safe. But again, during your breaks, there's ways to go to the opposite direction of the hip being flexed to the hip being extended, and then moving it in three planes of motion. So forward, backward, side to side rotation, and then integrating the hips to the rest of the body. So one of the things a lot of people do in fitness is they isolate because fitness kind of grew from bodybuilding, right? Which, hey, let me isolate the chest, let me isolate the shoulders. That's how you get them the biggest. But do they move well? Not really. So, functional fitness is about integration, making sure that the big toe and the foot turns on the heel and the calcaneus, which turns on the tibia and the fibula and the hip and then the butt and then the core and then the shoulders. So when you start getting everything to talk to each other, then the hips can stay looser. So I teach people to isolate the hip a little bit and move it in all three planes of motion, find out where it's tightest, and then we start to improve that motion. And then we teach it to talk to the rest of the body so it can get even more motion and feel more part of the family, part of the body. And then it won't lock up as much.
That is wonderful. So, what are you doing now?
So right now I have a couple things. I do individualized health coaching. I do pretty deep functional health coaching with personal training and exercise program design, mindfulness and micro habits. My nutrition I do. On the deepest level, I'll take DNA and blood work, and then we'll really specifically focus on overcoming whatever it's autoimmune, blood pressure, or cholesterol, diabetes. So I work with people like that. Then I work with people who just want to get really fit, and especially as we're aging and stay, youthful and pain-free and athletic. I'm 54 and I play, 3 hours of pickleball at least once a week, and I can play a lot of sports like snowboard, things like that. So I want to keep doing it until I'm 120, 130,
Mhm.
and then I'll start slowing down and maybe pass away around 150 is my goal. So we'll see how that goes.
Mm.
But all of it about quality of life. And then I build corporate wellness programs. So I go to companies and I have an app that we do these challenges that are really cool because they're not offensive. I don't do traditional weight loss challenges. I don't do steps challenges because what most companies and people don't think about is, and it's sad because data's been out there for 20 years now that these challenges don't work and these programs don't work because people who struggle with their health the most are not going to join a steps challenge with their peer work or their peers and coworkers. They're not going to join a weight loss challenge or a biggest loser challenge. And so we do what's called better you challenges. We take them to, hey, where are you at today? How do we improve that? And the theme of this challenge is going to be learning about just moving more, however you want to. I have a woman in one of my companies in Iowa that I'm working with now, a different company. And she's like, well, I'm not going to join your challenge after we were announced to get to the company. I'm like, oh, why not? And she's like, well, I'm a farmer. I have 20 acres. I work here 9, 10 hours a day. And I go farm for 2 or 3 hours. And then on Saturdays, I farm for 10 hours a day. Sometimes I even farm on Sundays. You know, why would I join your challenge? I'm like, did you hear the incentives? Like you're going to get vacation days and you can win gift cards. I go, you're going to be an inspiration for people. Just put your heart rate monitor on and go do your farming. You don't have to do anything else.
Mhm.
And she's in her 60s and she's on the top of the leaderboard with being participation and activity. So all we're measuring and showing for the other employees on like a leaderboard is how many minutes you're active and what percentage of your goals you're at. So for nutrition, all we have them do is take a picture of their food, rate it thumbs up, middle, or down. Nobody sees it except for the coach and themselves. And they're being scored and rated on how much participation and what percentage of your goals you're at. That's it. And each theme, like we have a better you anti-diet, we have better you positive, or better you be happy. So positive psychology stuff. We have better you mindfulness for stress management. So that's what I do for companies now.
Wonderful. And then how long did you say the challenges last?
6 weeks.
Okay.
And again, because we're trying to get people who struggle with their health the most to raise their hand and say, I'll do that, even among my peers and my coworkers. And, we did a lot of testing on 6 week, 8 week, 10 week, and 12 week. And no matter what it is, after 6 weeks, the engagement just starts to drop off. But what we also know is when we stayed at 6 weeks, people who struggle with their health the most would raise their hands like, okay, I could do something for 6 weeks. And we keep it light, we keep it very basic. We just want people, and I had a COO of a company, um, lost 62 pounds in 2 6 week challenges. It's the first time in 25 years he's under 300 pounds. And we didn't teach him anything super crazy. We didn't go any specific on him. We just said, listen, here's clean foods, here's processed foods, do 80 to 90% of these. Hey, here's portion control. Take some deep breaths and practice your portion control, learn portions. Then the next week they learn about mindful eating, eating slower. Then the next week they learn about importance of protein. Hey, make sure you get protein in most meals, and here's some clean sources of protein. Things like that. Basics.
Yeah, you said earlier, there's so many kinds of diets out there,
Yeah.
and from vegan to carnivore, some very strict and some very lenient, like you can almost eat anything.
Yeah.
So, um, what are some basic things people should follow as far as what are the foods that are always on the good list, and what are the foods that are always on the bad list, almost always?
Um, it's hard to say that all the word always is got to be loose, right? Because there's going to be somebody who struggles with, broccoli is one of those big examples. It's one of the healthiest foods on the planet, and 85 to 90% of the time, it's one of the best foods. There's 10 to 15% of the people that just don't break down broccoli good, especially not uncooked, right? Um, I would say the best thing to do is think about balance in the beginning and then just be mindful on how your body reacts. So without wearing a continuous glucose monitor, which can be expensive for people, I always say, look, after you eat your food, do you have more energy or less energy? Because if you have less, then you're doing something wrong because our food is designed to give us energy. If after you eat a pretty big meal within 90 minutes or 2 hours or less, you're starting to get hunger things and you're starting to think about food again, you spiked insulin again because now you get the blood sugar crashing. So I would say, think whole, real, natural foods is always like good. Vegetables are probably your safest bet for the most part. I would say 80% should be cooked, 20% raw, but lightly cooked or steamed. Um, that kind of stuff. Olive oil to me. So I'd say like the biggest superfood on the planet is probably olive oil, or olives. That's going to be always be good for everybody. I don't like olives, but I take 2 tablespoons of olive oil almost every single day. Um, the bad foods is the obvious stuff. Anything that has refined sugar in it. Um, I would say that anything with the dyes. I'm so grateful for what what Vonnie's doing with the Food Babe and how they've gone to Kellogg's and all these companies and saying, how can you produce these foods in our country and send the cleaner versions to Canada and no other ones to Europe, but you're leaving the worst quality for our own people in our own country. You make them here. And so I just saw yesterday that their sales of Fruit Loops is down 54% in the last 30 days, which is fantastic. Their stock has gone way down and people are selling their stocks and getting out of it. So I just think we need to put pressure on these companies to make cleaner, better quality foods. Um, but I would just, I love chocolate. I eat 99% of the time is a good, healthy, dark chocolate. Sometimes has a little caramel in it. Sometimes it's got almonds in it. Sometimes it's just sea salt. I don't need a ton of it, but I love it. I make my own ice cream with protein and chocolate mushrooms, and it's like raw cacao with mushrooms mixed in and a chocolate protein powder. And I put a little bit of monk fruit in there and tons of ice and a little bit of, almond milk and freeze it for 2 hours. And I have a big bowl of ice cream and it's
Well,
delicious and
that
super healthy,
sounds
right?
wonderful because I've tried some of the ones in the freezer section, like the Halo Top, and I'm like, this does not taste like ice cream to me. They may be calling it ice cream and it may be
Yeah.
frozen, but it tastes nothing like chocolate ice cream.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be hard to exactly match what you get with the heavy creams. Then again, it's okay to have that once in a while. I've gone on motorcycle rides and we stop at an ice cream shop and I'm going to have a little ice cream. I have no problem doing that once a year, every couple of years. Sometimes it's twice a year, but I don't really do it on a regular basis. And, pizza is my big, big, big love. But I'm a pizza snob, so I don't just get any pizza. So, I make sure it's really high quality pizza. And I actually recently learned to make pizza, and we buy the 00 flour, which is much lower glycemic. It doesn't have it's not from the wheat here. It's wheat from Italy, and it's naturally grown and it's 5, 6, 7 feet tall versus the short, hard wheat that we make in our country. Um, and my wife, who was never a big pizza fan, and my kids love this pizza more than when we go out for pizza. So I make pizza probably once a month or every 6 weeks now, and it's fun.
Wow. And you called it 00 flour? Is that what you called it? Can you
Yeah,
get
they call it 00. Yeah, you get it
lower?
on Amazon.
Okay. Well, I'm
Yeah,
going to
just
look that up.
Yeah, make sure it's organic and make sure it's from Italy, produced in Italy.
Hmm.
And yeah.
Well, I learned something new because I'm always looking for alternatives. You're raised a certain way with certain foods, and then as you get older and realize, oh, some of these aren't the best for you.
Oh, yeah, my parents raised us on Captain Crunch and Spam and little cans of mini hot dogs, bologna, white bread, wholesome, Twinkies. And I mean, we always had a Twinkie or a Star Crunch or a Ho-Ho in our lunch. I mean, we were just given the worst you could ever imagine. And I'm grateful that around 13 or 14, I started working out and wanted to start thinking about healthier foods. So I kind of had to go on my own and figure that one out.
Yeah. And then talk about, I think this is something people don't always bring up, but with the holidays, coming up, so many times food is connected to our emotions, our social interactions, our celebrations. And do you talk about that at all when you're working with people? As
Oh,
far as,
100%. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Um, Again, food is I mean, I'm Latino, so it's culture, it's celebration. We sat down at Thanksgiving with a bunch of cousins and my wife and kids, and we sat for 2.5 hours and just told stories and had jokes. And then got up and started dancing, at a dance party. And you know, the difference is that I think when people think about the holidays, they think about alcohol and they start snacking. And it's so unconscious. So to me, it always comes back to just be a little bit more conscious. If health is a priority for you, if you really care about your health, then just it's not like you have to go from this is what I normally do at these parties to go to eating a salad and drinking club soda only, right? It's like, hey, when I get to these parties, I always catch myself starting getting the dip and chips and getting the carrots and the snack and then having a few pieces of pretzels and a few chocolates. And all of a sudden I'm munching like crazy, right? Because
Hmm.
all those things create more cravings.
Hmm.
And then I'm having a beer or two beers, then and it piles on, and you have 6,000 calories in one day, and all of a sudden you have 9 parties throughout, between Thanksgiving through New Year's. So I teach people a couple little tips. One is before you go anywhere, fill yourself up a little bit with like a good protein shake, maybe 90 minutes beforehand, and drink plenty of water. And then get in the habit of drinking club soda. I put like bitters and lime in it because that increases your insulin sensitivity. And it makes me feel like I'm having a cocktail. So I will drink a couple of those, and then I might pick up a few snacks, right? Because then I'm not going to spike insulin and I don't crave as much because it's all about insulin spiking and then the craving. So if I had a couple of those club sodas with lime and a little bit of bitters, even if I have a few snacks, I don't start binging unconsciously. Whenever I'm going to have a meal, I teach people do not start with the bread. Make sure you have some kind of roughage and vegetables and fiber first. I have a client in Chicago that I still coach online, and him and his wife go to a Middle Eastern restaurant every Thursday night, and they get a big salad each, and then they share a hummus platter. And he wanted to lose like 15 pounds. He's a pretty fit guy, but just at 15 pounds, he could never get off. So, and I used to train him in person when I lived in Chicago and I had my gyms. And so he reached out, and so we started coaching online. And I said, get a continuous glucose monitor. Let's find out what spikes your blood sugar levels. And when he goes to this restaurant, it goes up 11 points, which is unbelievable. Anything between 10 and 25 is still good. 10 and 20 is phenomenal. And one day the salad came wrong, so he sent it back. By the time the salad came back, they'd already delivered the hummus and the pita and the hummus. And he started having a few pieces of that. When he looked on his phone, on his continuous glucose monitor, it went up 38 points, not 11. It's like, wow, just switching the order. And of course, bread is flour, which is, especially if it's made in the States and you're spiking sugar a ton, more than table sugar alone. So he just realized how important it is to have some roughage and fiber salad first. That's why I do either apple cider vinegar and water before a higher carb meal, or I do club soda with bitters and lime, or just club soda, things like that.
Yeah, and talk about that apple cider vinegar. So most of us wouldn't want to just drink apple cider vinegar because you put it in your mouth and go, ugh. So do you make yours into a tea or how do you drink that?
Yeah, I take 1 to 2 tablespoons and put it in a glass of water. Sometimes I'll put a little lemon in it as well. I drink water with chlorophyll all day long.
Mhm.
So, um, Yeah, but the apple cider vinegar basically again increases your insulin sensitivity because the body becomes desensitized to insulin. So the body keeps pumping more into it, like, hey, we're not responding, the blood sugar level is not changing. So more and more insulin keeps pumping into the body, and that's what really causes the pancreas to start failing, then the liver and prediabetes, diabetes, cholesterol goes through the roof, everything starts to go to hell in a handbasket, what they call
Yeah,
it.
yeah. My grandmother, and she lived to be 98, and in her
Oh
last year
wow.
of life, she was still playing shuffleboard. She had a pacemaker replaced twice, but she still was trying to walk around. But there became a point where she couldn't walk as far anymore because they couldn't put another pacemaker in, so we got her a golf cart. But I mean, she swore by the apple cider vinegar. Every morning she got up and had apple cider vinegar with water and a teaspoon of honey. Now, the honey maybe wasn't as good, but it does help the apple cider vinegar taste better. I mean, she had that every day. And I think being 90, did I say 90? 95.
98. All right.
Yeah, I think she was 95 when she died. So she lived a nice long life, and that was one of her habits that she did. Another habit was she was always, always, always moving.
Yeah. Beautiful. And again, so, yes, if you take honey by itself, it spikes insulin, right? For some people more than others. That's why that CGM is really important. I think for clients who are struggling with weight or struggling with health or even brain fog. Um, but if you have it with apple cider vinegar, the apple cider vinegar itself increases the insulin sensitivity so your body can regulate blood sugar and insulin better if you're having your honey with something like apple cider vinegar.
And then
Smart
why?
lady.
uh I was gonna say why the chlorophyll? Why do you drink green drink all that green water?
Yeah, because greens carry extra oxygen and extra nutrients for the cells that reduce inflammation. And inflammation is actually the foundation of all of it, autoimmune, um, Alzheimer's, degenerative disease, things like that. So uh, green foods have chlorophyll, and the chlorophyll from the sea is a little bit more potent. So it just improves your immune system, it reduces inflammation, and increases oxygen, so there's a lot less chance for cancer cells to expand or develop in the body.
Mhm. So you said chlorophyll from the sea. So is that
Yeah,
uh
so this has spirulina, blue-green algae, so it's chlorophyll from those resources.
got it?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you drink all green water or do you drink some regular
No,
water?
I drink three of these a day, like 3 glasses of these a day, and then in between is regular water. Sometimes I'll put a little bit of lemon in my water. Sometimes apple cider vinegar in my water, depending. Yeah.
Nice. See, these little simple things that you do every day just naturally are the things that, sharing them with our listeners, if they just added those things in, could make a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, people think they got to spend a ton of money, and you don't. If you're struggling with health and you're trying a lot of different things and you don't want to go down medications or want to get off medications, then you've got to do a little bit of specific digging. I think DNA and blood work can tell you a lot of stuff with the right qualified health coach. But if you just start with the basics of getting some sunlight, like your circadian rhythm is so much more impactful to your health than you think. I have a grounding mat, so I stand half the time and I sit half the time, but I'm bare feet all the time. My wife's like, "Does she ever put shoes on or socks?" I'm like, "No, I have my grounding mat, so my feet are grounding um, as if I was standing outside on the earth, right? And I do that when I get an opportunity, but getting in the sunlight in the first 30 minutes of waking up is super, super important. Doing some grounding, whether it's I have a grounding mat on our bed, I have a grounding mat here by my desk, which again reduces inflammation and has so much data and research on it that's just super powerful. Um, but those little things, and then if you start taking walks every day, if you start stretching every day, and it's literally 5 to 15 minutes, you don't have to do a ton of time. Do some strength training, whether it's your body weight. If you haven't done anything in a long time and you feel really weak, start with your body weight. But it's build it gradually, but you don't have to do a lot. When the truck driver said, "Oh, I don't have time to do anything." Do you have 4 minutes? Yeah, I could do 4 minutes. Great. And then they would call me and say, "Oh, I just did 20 minutes." I'm like, "I thought you didn't have time." "Oh yeah, but then I had to do laundry." I'm like, I know. I know your laundry's not going to be done in 3 minutes. So you got to sit there and wash the laundry machine. So
Hmm.
you have time. You just don't prioritize it yet. And until you start noticing and feeling the benefits. And The great thing about people who struggle with their health so much is when you make small shifts like this, you notice a difference like that.
Mhm.
You know, I had a truck driver that was drinking 16 to 20 Mountain Dews a
Oh,
day. And I said, man, you got to get off. He said, what about the headaches? I can't get off. The headaches. I'm like, how much energy do you really have? He's like, no, I mean, I'm struggling throughout the day. So I keep drinking them. So I got him this is called nano greens. And I got him this greens powder. I got him a meal replacement shake. I got him a nano reds. And I told him to get the chia seeds, and do that with the overnight oats. Start with that. He had just started, did orientation one day as a Wednesday. Exactly a week later, he'd come back through the terminal where the trucking company was. And he's like, Sergio, I haven't had a Mountain Dew in 3 days. I
wow.
can't believe how good I feel. I have so much more energy. I don't need any caffeine. I don't even need coffee. Like, oh, okay, great. I drink coffee. I love coffee, but it's your body starts to like, oh, wow, your body can produce its own energy, and food is fuel for us if we're putting the right things in our body. And I'm sure his hormones were just so out of whack and a mess drinking 16 to 20 Mountain Dews a day for years. And that's just, I can't even imagine.
I
It's just
can't
crazy.
either. I can't either. So talk about your book.
Say Goodbye to Belly Fat. So I kind of wrote it as a really quick read. I've read and I've taken so many nutrition courses, and everything is so deep into the science. And I'm like, I want to dumb this thing down, and I want to give people actionable steps. So I have 6 micro habits, 6 little steps to mastering your insulin. And it's everything we've been talking about, breath work and mindful eating. It's getting your gut healthy through balancing nutrients. So a mixture of colors and your things that are going to nourish your microbiome and your gut versus things that can cause harm. So just giving kind of lists on that and getting people started on that, teaching people a little bit, but just think about fasting a little bit. You don't have to go extreme, but the power of fasting is just, I mean, doctors are finally prescribing fasting. You know, it's it was so like pushed as woo-woo science, and now it's real science on the benefits of fasting. There are some doctors that are going back, oh, but you lose muscle, and muscle is the number one thing tied to longevity. I'm like, yeah, but the fasting is still so powerful. Just don't let your muscles deteriorate. Still do some strength training. So, if you're going to do some fasting, then making sure you're doing a little bit of strength training is super important. But um, that's the kind of stuff. And I talk about sleep and what are some good sleep hygiene practices, because sleep is probably the most studied topic in all of wellness over the last 35 years. And finally, now people realize it is connected to everything.
Mhm.
It's connected to Alzheimer's, diabetes, heart disease, depression. It's everything. So you got to learn to get good quality sleep.
I agree. So if people wanted to hire you or work with you, who do you work with at this point, and how do they connect with you?
Yeah, the easiest way is to connect with me on social media or message me. I'll give you my email. It's just Sergio at alive, the number one, coaching.com. So Sergio at Alive One Coaching, and Alive stands for Awakened Living, inspired by values of eternity. I like to have this spiritual element to wellness, and I think it's a spiritual responsibility to care for ourselves. And I don't have any judgment for people who've lost their way or haven't been able to. That would be pretty crappy and egoistic of me. I have zero judgment. I know that the food industries have manipulated us.
Mhm.
Uh, Even the diet industry has manipulated us. I've lost and gained weight so much, 5 of them as a certified health coach. So I have zero judgment, but I would love to serve and help people. And I try to teach people, like, look, if you can go into a little bit of a service-oriented perspective of it, how can I be a better person for the people around me that I love? And how can I honor the divine, whatever your belief is? Just I've been given this body. Why am I abusing it and ruining it? And that makes it easier to make better choices.
Exactly. So now I have a personal question for you.
Okay.
What gives you the most happiness and fulfillment at this point?
Besides spending time with my wife and kids, seeing them, I mean, is really been a ton of joy. My daughter literally just turned 18. She's going to go to college next fall, and she just got certified as a personal trainer 2 or 3 days ago, because she wants to do that while she's in college. Um, instead of working at a restaurant or a cafe or things like that, which I'm like, oh, wow, that is so cool. And she's been working out with me since she was probably 11. Uh, Working out with her has been a big joy. Skiing and snowboarding with them has been one of my biggest joys in the world. But I think when I hear a client that, or just have a client that really transforms their life and then it impacts the people around them. I'll give you a quick example. In one of the companies I'm working with, this woman Karen has just been like nonstop complimenting and so grateful for this. And I said, Karen, you're a rock star. I can't believe she's lost like 35 pounds. She's gotten off one or two of her medications. She's never had this much energy in 30 years. And she's probably in her late 50s, early 60s. I can't remember. Um, but then when she said, my husband and my son now want to me to cook with them or cook for them versus them eating something separate. Now we're going on walks together. My son's gone to the gym with me a couple times. Like that's just changed an entire family and how that trip goes on. That to me is some of my biggest joys.
That is really awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today
Oh,
and
my
great
pleasure.
wisdom. Yeah, yeah. So I have one last question before we finish.
Yep.
What is your best advice on living an incredible, amazing life?
It's a hard one to say by just one thing, but my best advice is to have a spiritual practice, be connected to something greater than yourself, some divine, and be of service, and no matter what you're doing, find purpose in there. Be of service to other people and find purpose in whatever you're doing, whether you're cleaning a high school, whether you're uh, just working in a mail room. I don't know if they have mail rooms anymore these days, but it doesn't matter what you're doing. Follow some dreams, uh, take care of your health, because without your health, you have nothing. Uh, and be of service and have a spiritual practice. I think kind of those little four quadrants right there will give people a nice, happy, best, fulfilling life.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sergio.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much. I feel honored to be on here and so grateful to share with you and your audience.
Thanks. We'll talk to you again soon.
All righty. Look forward to it.